Lowland.
Hello and good morning, everybody. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're just going to give it a few more minutes, 2 or 3 more minutes, just to let any others who are still planning on joining get on board. It's looking like we're getting more and more joining all the time, so give it maybe 1 more minute and then we can get ready to kick off. But yeah, thank you all for joining us today. So first webinar of a 3-part series. Today's subject is understanding civil service job descriptions and CVs. So we're really honing in on CV writing and how to understand what's been looked for in job descriptions and how to bring that out in your CV. So I think it's a good opportunity to bring to everyone's attention that today's session has been recorded. If anyone's got any issues with the session, if you maybe want to raise your hand very quickly, or alternatively, feel free to drop off the call. We can of course share the recording of this with anybody after the event. For that, if you please just give me a message. You'll have seen the details when you were issued your invite, or you can reply on the chat if you'd like to receive that. But I think the recording and transcription should be automatically posted on the chat, so you should have access to that after the meeting in any event.
I think we get started then, Joe.
Yep, so 3 minutes past, so yeah, ready to kick off. I'll hand over to Keir.
Thanks very much, Joe, and thanks for giving a bit of an introduction there. So, yeah, good morning, everyone, and really kind of good to see some kind of good numbers this morning. So, thanks very much for joining. So, I'm just going to kind of quickly talk through what to expect from this seminar, which, as Joe mentioned, is the kind of first in a series. So what you can expect from it, and a bit of an agenda, kind of any learning outcomes as well. So the webinar this morning has been designed to help civil servants understand kind of job descriptions and create CVs that genuinely stand out as well. So quite often job descriptions can feel quite technical and certainly full of civil service kind of specific language or jargon, especially when, for example, they refer to frameworks like success profiles. So our kind of aim today is certainly to try and begin simplifying that kind of process and make it a wee bit more clear. Do kind of bear in mind that this is a kind of fairly awareness level seminar. So if you're an absolute expert at writing CVs, we may be kind of covering some similar ground that you may already know. But certainly kind of do stay on the call, as at the second half we'll have maybe a bit more time to open to a bit of a kind of discussion where your experiences would be kind of quite valued. Can see there's a question coming in just about sound. Am I kind of coming through clearly for everyone? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Maybe if you're having issues with sound, sometimes honestly the easiest way is to just drop off the call and join back quickly, but I do apologise. So throughout the session, we're going to be looking at how to interpret the essential and desirable criteria, as well as behaviours and strengths that are expected from roles and set out in job applications as well, or job descriptions. So we're also going to talk about how to shift from kind of listing duties to highlighting achievements, so that your CV has a wee bit more impact there as well. So we really hope that by the end of the session, you should leave with a kind of practical and certainly kind of actionable strategies that you can use straight away when applying to jobs. All right. Please do, again, be aware, as Joe mentioned, that this is the first seminar in a series of 3 seminars that are kind of covering, the application process and applying to jobs. So if you do feel that, something maybe isn't covered in this session or isn't covered in the depth you would like, it likely, or it kind of may or quite likely will be covered in the following seminars. So they're running next Wednesday and the following Wednesday. So that'll be the 28th and the 4th, and they're running at the same time at 10 a.m. So just to kind of quickly cover the agenda overview, we're going to begin with a bit of a kind of overview of civil service job descriptions, looking at their purpose and explaining kind of what each section means. And from there, we're going to move into the kind of success profiles framework, so covering behaviours, strengths, experience, and any kind of other technical requirements there. So after that, we're going to talk through how to structure a strong CV, so including a personal profile, experience, skills, and achievements. And we're going to explore techniques for tailoring a CV so that it aligns closely with the job description. And we'll highlight some kind of quite common mistakes, certainly that we've seen or that we've experienced, that people make, and how to try and avoid them. So we're going to go through some examples of effective CV points, and then we're going to finish with some final tips and a bit of a kind of Q&A session. So the kind of first half of this session we'll be kind of talking at you, but we hope that this kind of second half can be a wee bit more interactive and open to a wee bit more of a discussion. We're kindly joined today by leaders and organisers from the Scotland Junior Leaders Network, and I'm pretty sure that probably most of us here this morning are joining from the mail out from the Scotland Junior Leaders Network. So kind of delighted to be joined by them to hear their insights. They both have plenty of experience and kind of applying to jobs as well as kind of recruiting as well. So they're quite happy to share their insights and answer any burning questions. But as I mentioned, quite happy to hear experiences from across the board here this morning. So the kind of main idea is that the agenda has been designed to kind of try and give you quite a clear and comprehensive understanding of both job descriptions and best kind of CV practice. All right, so I'm going to pass on now to, I think, Becca, who's going to go into a wee bit more detail on kind of understanding job descriptions. So over to you.
Sorry, thanks, Keir. So yeah, I'm going to be discussing understanding civil service job descriptions. So if we can move to the next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. So civil service job descriptions act as a roadmap for applicants by outlining the purpose of the role, the responsibilities involved, and what the employer expects from you. They set out essential and desirable criteria, which help you understand the minimum qualifications required and what might help you stand out further. They also include behaviours and strengths from the Success Profiles framework, such as delivering at pace, communicating and influencing. Some roles may also mention technical skills or specialist experience. By understanding each component, you can identify exactly what to emphasise in your CV and in your application. For instance, if stakeholder engagement is highlighted, you'll know to draw on examples of communication and collaboration. Breaking down each section allows you to tailor your application effectively. Okay, and if we can move on a slide, please, Joe. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so reading between the lines. So interpreting a job description is more than just reading the list of criteria. It's important to look for repeated keywords or themes, as these usually reveal what the hiring manager views as a priority. If you notice regular references to deadlines or project delivery, that signals a need for strong time management and organisational skills. Mentions of team structure or stakeholder involvement offers clues about interpersonal skills and that are important for the role. Understanding the broader purpose of the role within the department helps you understand how your experience connects to the organisational goals. When you read between the lines like this, you can align your CV much more strategically and present yourself as someone who genuinely understands the expectations that are set. So I'll pass you on to Natalia.
Hello. So we follow by structure and tailoring your CV. CVs are very big, scary thing, and lots of people thinking, oh, how am I going to do this, and how to structure it, or if you're confident of making CV, you're still not sure how to apply it to civil service job applications. So well-structured CV is essential because you have a short time to make a strong impression. CVs are typically 1 to 2 pages and should use clear headings such as personal profile, experience, and skills. Your personal profile should be a short summary of who you are and the strengths you're bringing to the role. In the experience section, you should focus on your achievements rather than simply listing your duties. You can use STAR method. It's a great way to provide context and demonstrate impact of your CV. And we'll cover that more in detail in our other sessions, as we said. We're going to have another 2. So STAR method will be covered there if you want to know more. And in CV also, whenever you can, try to include numbers, percentages, improvements, time saved, as they make your achievements more convincing. Keep your formatting clean and professional so the CV is easy to scan and understand, because lots of organizations using scanning IT tools, which has certain points that they're looking for. So you want to make sure that your CV will progress further. In many civil service recruitment processes, CV used alongside your main applications, so it should reinforce and support the information you provide on your application rather than repeat it. So when it asks you to add your CV and sometimes it says it's not going to be scored, still try to give more information and more relevant to the role. Okay, if we move to the next slide, please, Joe. So tailoring your CV to a specific role is one of the most effective ways to improve your chances of success. This means echoing the language used in the job description, especially around key behaviors and competencies. For example, if the role emphasizes making effective decisions, you should highlight examples that demonstrate analytical thinking and sound judgment. Keeping your CV focused involves removing irrelevant information and prioritizing experiences that connect directly to the role. Even if those examples come from a different sector. So it doesn't matter as long as you use your personal examples, your personal experiences, and you put this on. Using the right keywords not only helps recruiters, but also improves your chances with applicant tracking systems. As I said, if CV is being read by AI, for example, then for recruiters, then it picks up the keywords which they are looking for. So do include those. So tailoring doesn't mean rewriting your entire CV each time. It just means that making precise, thoughtful adjustments that show that you understand what the role requires. Okay. If we move to the next slide, please. So now we quickly go over some mistakes, what some people put on their CVs. So maybe many applicants make common mistakes that weaken their CVs. And one of the biggest issues is including too much text. Nobody wants to read too much text, and especially if you have so many CVs to go through, recruiters just spend. I mean, there was a research and statistics showed that recruiters spend about 7 seconds reading CV, which is not much, but they do scan important information. So try to try not to put too much text. So because otherwise it makes it too difficult to read or to scan. Another one is submitting a generic CV that hasn't been tailored to the specific job. People also often list duties instead of achievements. So this is where important to make a CV shine. You have to put your achievements because otherwise it doesn't show impact at all. Failing to provide evidence of behaviors, for example, teamwork or problem solving, can also reduce the strength of the application. To avoid these pitfalls, it's important to keep your CV concise and focused on achievements. Proofreading is essential to avoid small errors, and getting feedback from colleague or from mentor can give you helpful insights and help you refine your document. So absolutely, if you haven't heard of mentoring or was not sure, the lots of throughout civil service, there's lots of mentoring services. So look into that. It's very, very good support. If we move up again. So the examples of enhancing your CV, simple example can show how powerful small changes can be. So instead of saying on your CV, processed incoming calls for customers, you might say handled 40+ customer inquiries daily, resolving 90% at first contact and improving satisfaction. I know it sounds probably cheesy or too much, but you need to be a little bit more factual to make more impact. So this rewritten version, so more you put in and more factual and scalable information you put in, it shows volume, efficiency, and impact, and it aligns well with behaviors like delivering at pace and managing a quality service. Another example might be changing a statement like updated spreadsheets. So something more meaningful, such as maintained and improved data spreadsheets, reducing errors by 25% throughout consistent quality checks and clearer formatting. So yes, a little bit more words, but it gives more impact than just updated spreadsheets. Think what you do. So often people don't think what they actually do, and you probably do much more than you can put in a paper. Ask your colleagues. Sometimes it's really good to ask your colleagues to say, explain, tell me what do you think I'm doing in my job, in my role, and what impact it makes, and go from there. A further example could be in enhancing, for example, worked as part of a team. Very often you can see this in CVs where people just put worked as part of the team. Everybody works as part of the team if you are in a team. So instead try saying collaborated with colleagues across 3 departments to streamline a new reporting process, reducing completion time by 2 days each month. So this demonstrates teamwork, problem solving, and clear contribution to efficiency. So these examples demonstrate how turning duties into achievements transforms your CV into a much more compelling document. Using quantifiable results whenever you can helps to provide to prove your impact and makes you more memorable to recruiters. If we go to next slide, please. So just to conclude, so it is important to remember that understanding job descriptions and tailoring your CV are key steps in civil service recruitment process. Analyzing job descriptions carefully, structuring your CV clearly, and aligning your contact with success profiles all help strengthen your application. avoiding common mistakes and providing clearer evidence of behaviors will improve your chances. Simple habits like proofreading and seeking feedback can make a big difference. So stay proactive, keep your CV updated, and also try to prepare yourself now for your future opportunities. So by applying these strategies, you'll be a much stronger position to succeed in recruiting civil service roles. Okay. I'll pass you back to my colleague Kia.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And I think some really important kind of points to take away there. And I think before I kind of discuss the kind of upcoming webinars and also introduce you to Ollie and Gregor, I think certainly for me, a couple of really key takeaways that kind of Natalia and Becky were talking about is the first one, basically keeping a CV up to date. I know personally I'm actually really quite bad at doing that, and I only ever kind of look at you know, my CV when, you know, I'm kind of looking at roles, or I'm looking at applying to roles, which isn't the best kind of practice, and I think it makes, you know, kind of chances of successful applications definitely kind of less as well. I think if we're kind of trying to cram in you know, a kind of job application along with kind of restructuring or rewriting the CV or updating it, it's just going to make things a lot harder and a lot trickier. So definitely that's a note to myself, as well as a kind of call to action for everyone else. And I think as well, something that was mentioned, but I think is always really understated, is getting someone to have a second look over your kind of CV or your job application. I think we're really quite lucky in the civil service that, certainly kind of my experience, has been working with really amazing people and teams that I've been a part of. And generally speaking, kind of regardless of how busy we all are, people are always quite keen to help and to have a look over and to give you advice, and also pick someone that you trust. There's no point in someone reading or proofreading a CV or a job application if they're not really gonna give you any tough feedback. You really want that feedback before you send an application in, as well. And I think it can't be understated how important it is to write in a really quite clear and effective way, quite simply, making sure that there aren't grammatical errors or mistakes, and making sure that CVs and job applications are quite concise and easy to follow. I think it's incredibly understated how important that is, as Natalia was kind of mentioning, from a recruiter's point of view, that makes a huge difference when you're reading quite a lot of CVs or job applications when you're recruiting to roles. As mentioned, we do have 2 further webinars coming up, and in case anything maybe wasn't covered in this session that you're interested in hearing more, but I did send it into the chat, and apologies, when I sent into the chat, the text came up really large, so apologies for that, but I'm just going to talk through them again. So our next webinar, webinar 2, is about preparing for promotion, recognising readiness and taking the next step. So that session is going to focus a wee bit more on the kind of practical tools and guidance to help you assess readiness kind of for promotion or for new jobs, to build confidence within that, and understanding kind of key skills and behaviours needed for higher roles. So kind of really focusing a bit more on job applications in that sense, and kind of, you know, specific to roles, you know, especially if you're going for that kind of next step or that promotion. And then our kind of third webinar is focusing on the human aspect of applying for jobs, especially kind of around handling rejection, and also understanding a wee bit more about the kind of the recruiter's perspective. So really kind of trying to tie together what we've discussed in the first 2 seminars. So that's going to provide some quick kind of practical insights, and also emotional strategies to kind of navigating setbacks, and how to kind of see the hiring process through a recruiter's eyes. As well. So, you know, obviously there's a really big kind of human aspect to both applying and recruiting, and I think it'd be really quite remiss of us to not, you know, think about that or kind of discuss that as well. I wonder if it's now worth allowing kind of Ollie and Gregor to maybe introduce themselves, give a wee bit of a kind of flavour about who they are, what they do, certainly maybe the kind of their experiences within this space. And I really encourage everyone, we've got some kind of really good questions in the chat already, but as I say, we're working quite well to time at the moment, and we were really hoping to have this kind of second half of this session, a bit of a discussion. We've got loads of people in the call, so really hoping that you've got some kind of kind of more burning questions. And as I say, actually, maybe your own experiences that you would like to share within, you know, kind of writing CVs and trying to kind of understand job applications and what you think about that. So there's quite a few, first maybe kind of worth covering, there's quite a few kind of practical sessions just about kind of slides and transcripts. So yeah, as I say, we can kind of share the slides. The session has been recorded, so we can share that as well. And kind of really good to see already that people are kind of wanting to see the slides and share them further. So that's great. But I'll maybe, as I say, pass over to Ollie or Gregor. Don't know who wants to jump in first. Just to introduce themselves, as I mentioned, they're from the well, obviously they have their own jobs and roles, but they're also really, really involved in the Scotland Junior Leaders Network. So quite happy to hear a wee bit about that as well. So over to you guys.
Okay, happy to go first, Ollie, if you want. So hi everyone, my name is Gregor Henderson. Day job, currently work as a grade 7 in the Home Office and a leadership and management training role in the world of asylum and human rights. So again, very kind of busy, very fast paced, very contentious at the moment, so it's good fun. So again, a bit about myself, been in the kind of civil service for 9 years now, I think it is. Started off as kind of an EO, and I think lots of experience that I kind of hope to share with throughout the kind of Q&A, from applying from lots of different jobs, both the kind of success and failure that's come with that as well, and happy to kind of talk to some of those kind of bits about the CV. I think just before I pass over to Ollie as well, big congratulations and thank you to the group so far for kind of pulling that really good session together, really kind of great content and punchy, which is nice to see. So big well done to them, and they're kind of part of the Leaders of the Future Academy group that have kind of been put together, and again, really kind of good session there, so just big thank you to them. And outside the kind of day job, kind of founded the Scotland Junior Leaders Network as well, which is kind of all what this is part of, and where you kind of got the email from as well. So kind of keep an eye out for future events as well. We do a lot of kind of different learning events, things kind of similar to this, different kind of virtual sessions, in-person sessions that you can come to as well, and the Leaders of the Future Academy, which I'm happy to kind of talk more about in the Q&A as well. But I will pass over to Ollie, but kind of plenty of experience of sifting applications, being interviewed panel members, chairs, all that type of stuff that can share as well as we go through it. But I'll pass over to you, Ollie. Thank you.
Cheers, Greg. Yeah, nice to be here. Great to help out with such a great session. So thank you to the guys who have organised this. I am Oliver Pickard. I work in the Department for Transport, mostly in the devolution space, so focusing on Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and working with the devolved governments. I've not been a civil servant quite as long as Gregor. I think I'm just ticking over to 5 years now, but my experience has mostly been in policy and comms and engagement roles. So that's maybe slightly different. If you've got sort of operational questions, maybe that's Gregor answering that, and then me on sort of policy and other sort of things. But similar to Gregor, I've sat on panels, I've run recruitment rounds as well, for a variety of different roles. So yeah, I've been classed as an expert, but let's see, I'll give my best answers. I think a lot of this is very subjective to the application process you're going through and the experiences that you have. So don't feel like one answer fits all, and it might be that you need to look for sort of individual support as well alongside what we can give you today. But yeah, happy to answer any questions. So looking forward to what you've got.
You've been very humble there, Ollie. But I think a really kind of good point there about the fact that, yeah, a lot of this is kind of fairly subjective. But I think what's really important is the more kind of time and energy and space we give to these kind of discussions, the better. And as I say, that's why I'm kind of really glad that we've got so many people kind of on the call this morning, and certainly people that I'm assuming come from loads of different backgrounds, loads of different jobs, departments, roles. This really is a good opportunity for everyone to kind of have an opportunity to kind of give a flavour of who they are and what they do. But I think, yeah, exactly that, Ollie. I wonder if it's maybe most useful if I'll kind of run through the questions that we have so far. And let you kind of come in that sense, because the chat is getting quite busy, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything. If I do miss your question, please do just fire the question back in again. It likely won't be deliberate if I've missed it. I think the first one here, which is a really good one, is from Lynn, which is how far back in your career or your job history should you refer back to kind of show achievements or experience there? So yeah, open to kind of who maybe wants to come in first there.
Yeah, kind of have a stab and kind of been doing a CV sort of fairly recently, and I think the way I kind of approach it is it's kind of fatter at the start, I suppose, and kind of gets thinner and thinner as it go down. So again, my kind of current experience is a bit more. What I would say is it kind of very much depends on the job that you're applying for. So for the kind of one recently, it was around kind of like human resources and organizational development, so you kind of like support development of people. So again, I was going to be able to kind of go back to, what was that, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago now, where I was kind of doing like a large SEO operations role, had about 150 people. So it was kind of lots of kind of like HR and kind of organizational design stuff there. So that bit was then kind of a bit longer than what it would usually be. So that was kind of like general rule of thumb of kind of how I'd kind of lay it out as such. What I would say is it entirely depends on you and your kind of experience levels and the jobs that you've got. You might have been in the same job for 20 years. You might have had 20 different jobs in the last 20 years, right? So again, I think it's kind of very dependent on you and your experience. But I think sort of try and kind of think about, right, what is it the kind of the vacancy holder? What is it the kind of advert is looking for? Where are my kind of key skill sets within that as well? Another question that I got asked in kind of like a similar session to this as well was, what if I've been out of work for a little bit of time as well? So I had kind of someone that was doing homeschooling and for one of their kind of children. And again, that's kind of useful experience that you could think about how you could sort of tailor that into your CV as well, in terms of, right, how did you work with the education boards? How did you kind of pull that together, that learning together? How did you kind of check understanding? All those kind of useful skills as well. So I would say there's kind of not a general rule or kind of cut-off point as such, but it's kind of very much dependent on your experience and what you think will kind of best show yourself as having that experience for the job role. But don't know if you think the same, Ollie, or differently.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way I kind of approach it, I would say most applications that you get, it's sort of that 2-page limit. So what are either the last 5 years or the last 5 jobs? What are the key things that I can pull out of that? And that basically whichever works best for you. Like 5 years, if you've done a variety of different jobs, like Gregor says, you might be able to pull something out. There might be parts that you want to really focus on. If it's a longer period or you've had a period without work or anything like that, yeah, think about the last 5 jobs and don't worry too much about the timeline, and try and pull out the key things that are relevant to the job that you're looking at there.
Super, thanks very much both. I think I wonder, maybe just kind of building off that, and Greg, you kind of answered it a wee bit there, as well, as the idea of that kind of using experience just from your jobs or roles within the civil service. And again, you kind of touched on that, Gregor, there, but I think maybe quite an important point to kind of underline that actually, it doesn't necessarily just have to include that kind of experience. Again, it's very kind of subjective, and it definitely kind of depends on the kind of role that you're maybe going for at the application. But if you do have experience from out with roles within the civil service, that might be kind of quite crucial to include there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the kind of like the volunteering angle is kind of like a useful thing to cover sometimes as well. So if you do any of that, whether that's kind of like anything from school councils to stuff outside of work, I did a bit of kind of like it's like a football kind of club coaching thing in the past as well. So again, like things like that can be useful to kind of include as well, especially if you kind of take like a school council, which is probably kind of quite a popular example. Lots of kind of like robust stakeholder engagement, I imagine, that you've got there. Lots of kind of challenges, lots of emotions and different views and all that type of stuff as well. So again, things that you can kind of weave into ways that show kind of that skill set that meets the role ultimately as well.
Yeah, I think those sorts of things, when you're doing recruitment, it does make you stand out a bit. You can read a lot of applications from both the private and from civil servants that sound very similar, or they're just work focused. And actually, having something like Gregor says, a sports team, something that you've volunteered on, just gives you that extra. Oh, I remember them. They were the ones that did X, so that can be helpful as well, just in terms of planting a seed in the recruiter's mind.
Yeah, super. Thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, a really good point there about kind of trying to set yourself apart. Certainly. Just a quick kind of question there on, this is probably more just for me, but will we get the examples that we were talking about to make the CV better? So we can try and include the kind of the notes and the slides that we send out folks, so you can actually kind of read it on the page. Next question from Leona. So kind of saying, linking to behaviours, what about linking to job specs, or kind of job specifics or specifications, like essential criteria? That's a really good question, something we covered a wee bit more in the kind of following seminar. But certainly, Gregor, Ollie, I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts at this point. No problem if not, we can move on. But as I say, we'll kind of be covered later. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a crucial element of it. On ones I've seen recently, obviously the use of AI, which is sort of encouraged in terms of refining your application, is meaning that a lot more people are submitting applications that include the keywords. So I think that was always the advice that was given prior to the sort of more acceptable use of AI. And I think, yeah, I think that's probably becoming more crucial, that you're tailoring it to the words that are used in the application. But I think it's also useful to consider how those buzzwords show your own personal experience, rather than just trying to get them in, because yeah, that might look good that you're using all the terminology, but actually that's also creating a new environment where people are really focusing now on, well, that's nice that they mentioned it, but actually what experience do they have that shows that is the case, rather than just a tick box of the word is in there. So be careful of that and mindful of that when you're writing your application, especially if you're using AI to refine your statement.
Yeah, I agree with that, and have read many an application that is kind of buzzword bingo, if I call it that. And they've used every kind of fancy word that they can, but there's no kind of real sort of substance behind it. So I think kind of including a lot of that, how in terms of how, if you take the word collaborated, how did you do that? Did you kind of create those safe spaces for people? Did you engage with people one-to-one? Did you have kind of big group conversations? What was it that you actually kind of did within that? And then from that, kind of backing up with the kind of the outcomes as well, in terms of, right, what were the kind of numbers and people involved with that? What difference did that make? All that type of stuff is really where it's going to kind of show that you're kind of understanding what the criteria is that's there, and definitely kind of something to kind of consider in your CVs, your personal statements, all that kind of good stuff, to kind of understand what's there, and then really kind of demonstrate that within what you're putting forward as well. So yeah, would agree with Ollie there as well.
Thanks very much, both. I think, yeah, really interesting, especially kind of with AI, both the kind of opportunities that provides in terms of, kind of writing things and trying to make things more concise, but certainly the kind of pitfalls that I think we've all maybe experienced or kind of felt through there. So yeah, something to be really, really conscious of. Absolutely. Kind of really good question here from Derek. Basically asking how often should we update our CVs? So yeah, as we kind of touched on, probably don't update it as often as we should. But would you maybe kind of suggest to update it like every few months? So is it updating in terms of a bit of a kind of timestamp, or actually does it make more sense to update it every time your job role or kind of responsibilities change? So maybe when there's kind of more reason to add new kind of content in there or update it.
Yeah, so it's probably like UK are probably not the best at keeping up to date, I suppose. I'll be honest with that. I think I kind of tend to do it when I'm kind of applying for a new job, or kind of do want to kind of include something within the CV. I would definitely kind of like review it every time before you apply for the job, and kind of tailor it towards the vacancy, because again, you can kind of see the ones that have been kind of taking that time to kind of tailor it to each job and have really kind of met that criteria, factored that into their kind of CV as well. So I wouldn't say there's kind of like a hard and fast sort of rule as such, but yeah, again, I would kind of think about looking at even like your check-ins that you do, your sort of one-to-ones with your line managers. If you're kind of writing them down, that can be kind of a useful place to go. Right, I can't remember what I've done in the last 12 months completely. What are the kind of types of things that I could pull out within that CV as well? So that would be my kind of bit of advice, or kind of how I go about it as such.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think the key sort of message is, my approach, for example, I would if I'm successful, get a role, I would still have the previous job application. So I maybe would select some of the key responsibilities that they'd included on that job application. And then obviously once you're in the role, you can see, well, actually I do X, Y, and Z, tailor it so you have that base CV, but then I would also be, every job I know it's onerous and it's maybe not the most exciting thing to do, but it really does make a difference if you're looking at somebody who looks like they've put effort into this role, and want to demonstrate, and for you, sorry, you want to demonstrate that you have the skills in your previous roles that match the job description that you're working towards now as well. I'm not sure this may be a good time to mention. It might come up a bit later on, but in some of the questions, so I've not had a look through. But I think Gregor made a good point there about touching on that in your like one-to-ones and like not necessarily being good at updating it. I always give advice to people I mentor or people I look at their applications in terms of writing down examples of when they've done stuff in your work, because as Gregor says, when you get to writing a job application, you think, what do I actually do? What do I do day to day? You know, if you think you've, you know, maybe once a month look back and think, I have achieved X, Y, and Z, and then write down a little sort of skeleton behavior, something that you can flesh out at a later date, but you'll have that in your memory to come back to go, oh yeah, I did do that, and I just need to tailor it to delivering at pace or leadership or communicating influence and something like that. So hopefully that's a good time to mention that, but I think that's a good tip for if you're thinking about when to tailor things and when to have things ready to go.
Yeah, I think just that as well, just on that. But so I've seen kind of something recently that one of my kind of grade 7 peers did, and it was kind of like they just listed all the behaviors that they could it was for kind of our team and such, but they just kind of listed all the behaviors that are out there, and they had kind of a box next to it say, right, what behaviors do you actually kind of have for each of those ones, and it kind of helps to show you your kind of gaps and such, and whether that's kind of, right, I've not kind of done much in the leadership space, I need to think about how do I build that in the current role, or is it kind of something that I might need to move sideways first so I get that kind of large leadership experience before applying for the next grade as well. So that kind of might be a useful exercise for some of you as well, just to kind of list those behaviors and then think about what have I got in terms of examples that can then meet those as well.
Very much both. There's another kind of quick practical question. Will there be further dates? So Margaret's asking, will there be further dates as you can make the third webinar? Currently, no. So this is our kind of first run of these events. So certainly kind of never say never, but currently there's kind of no plan in place for future dates. As is going to be mentioned in the chat, they will be recorded and we'll be able to share them. Margaret, all right. Question from Andrew. Would you know of or have access to any materials showcasing a bad example of a CV and an updated example utilising the tips and tricks outlined in the session? Certainly not part of this session. We don't necessarily have an example of a kind of bad CV, Andrew, but kind of really good point there is that, you know, it's obviously quite handy to kind of hear the kind of tips and that kind of thing. But I can see Natalia's camera coming on, so maybe that's Natalia saying she wants to kind of come in and give a bit of a taste of her experience there. But I'll let you jump in.
I mean, as I mentioned before, CVs are very individual. So it's, and same what I was saying, you have to tailor it to yourself, to your experiences. So bad examples is waffling too much, too many words, not relevant experiences. And the good examples, it's actually scaling and showing what you did rather than what the job description was. So from this point, so you really have to think of it yourself. Do speak with your mentor, with colleague, with whoever you can, but yeah, try to make it your personal. More personal your CV will be, better success it will have. So I hope it answered the question.
Super, thanks, Talia. And I think, yeah, again, really kind of just emphasising there what we were kind of discussing in the presentation, but also what Gregor and Ollie have really picked up, which is about that kind of that substance, right? You know, yeah, kind of really making sure that you back everything up with kind of really good substance. Gregor, Ollie, any kind of final thoughts on that? But again, you've kind of spoken, you know, to that, I suppose, kind of around that question in quite some depth. So yeah, all good. Question from Jacqueline asking, do the civil service use AI to screen the applications? Again, any thoughts from kind of Gregor, Ollie, and certainly kind of in your experience?
I think
Go for it first.
Yes, sorry. I think on some of the larger recruitment, I think it is used, but I know a lot of it is still done the sort of traditional way, for want of a better word. So yeah, I think I wouldn't let that play into your thinking too much in terms of what to expect your, or how to expect your application to be assessed. I would approach it that a human's going to look at it and what would they want to see and hear would be my approach to it. But don't know if Gregor thinks otherwise on that one.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose kind of not seeing it used too often. I think it would probably be something that's been trialed and piloted somewhere in the civil service, I'd imagine, right now. But Yeah, similar advice to Ollie. I think kind of just trying to make it as personal as possible is the kind of the key with it as well. I think it's been kind of touched on a few times, but kind of using AI to help you build your CV as well is something that's kind of useful to do. I think learning kind of how to prompt whatever tool you're going to use, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT or any other ones that are available, is kind of a useful thing to do. Able to kind of like post into the key criteria that you're applying against, the behaviors, whatever it may be, and then I kind of ask it to kind of rate it out of 10 and then kind of put it in multiple times and try and kind of bump that up. But then always kind of after that, kind of take that step back and think, right, have I lost too much of myself within that? And then sort of have another colleague look at it. And that's probably the advice what I kind of lean on is where someone that's more experienced, someone that's kind of I trust can kind of look through it and kind of give you that more kind of personal advice to kind of tailor it and make it kind of even stronger as well.
And can I add as well that our third session will be covering that as well, more from the recruiter's perspective as well, and how it works. So if anybody interested to know more, do join our third session as well. And all the information is on chat.
Super, thanks very much both. Question here. Oh, sorry, I've lost my place. One second. A large part of the application includes a supporting statement. Do you have any resources or tips on how to make a really good one? So as mentioned, that'll be covered in a wee bit more depth in our kind of second session, also looking at the STAR method as well and how to kind of effectively utilize that. So it's maybe, not the kind of time to kind of really get into that. Again, if there's any kind of maybe initial thoughts on that, or kind of like very kind of quick thoughts, or a few kind of tips or lines or bullets that you might have, Greg or Ollie, do jump in. But as I say, we'll kind of maybe save the kind of the substantive discussion around that for the next seminar.
Yeah, happy to do some rapid fire ones, I suppose, but I think kind of very similar to the CV, right, in terms of have that kind of punchy introduction about yourself if you've got the words to allow it as well, about kind of like really hook the reader in at that point. Presenting your kind of examples in kind of like a STAR format is what I tend to do. Other people kind of then go against just the criteria and kind of break down each one of those. So there's kind of two different ways for that. Include your kind of like your really strong outcomes in there, your numbers, your figures, your percentages, all that type of stuff as well. And remember the kind of keyword is personal within it as well. So again, keep that at the heart of it in terms of what is your personal approach within that and how do you kind of personally lead. But yeah, that's a very kind of quick fire answer. But I don't know, Ollie, if you want to add your thoughts to it.
Yeah, just one thing for me is that especially when you're doing the supporting statement alongside behaviours, use that as your opportunity to get in anything else you think is relevant to that role that you aren't able to get in through your behaviours would be my advice as well, alongside with what Greg has said there.
Super, thanks both. Just say, folks, the questions have been really good, so please do kind of keep them coming. Next question. It would be good to understand the kind of difference between previous skills and experience and a personal statement. So maybe to kind of just expand that. I think certainly kind of from my experience, sometimes you can find yourself almost just kind of rehashing the same kind of thing you've talked about, and you kind of find yourself at the end going, right, no, actually that okay, it might kind of be worded different, and I might have tried to kind of speak about it in different ways, but really I'm kind of just talking about the same things. So maybe to kind of expand that, how do you kind of really make sure that different sections are different and that you're really kind of making sure that that kind of reads a bit quite kind of concisely and succinct and is actually includes different content and experience there.
Yes, I think I've seen it before, and I think if I'm interpreting the question right, it's kind of like the difference between those two boxes you sometimes get in civil service jobs, and one's like employment details and one's kind of previous skills and experiences. And I do find that quite a strange thing that is in there in the first place, is the first thing I'll say. But I think kind of the way that I've kind of approached that in the past is kind of just include the employment kind of details in terms of dates, roles, grades, all that kind of stuff in the kind of first box. And then from that kind of in the second box go into kind of more of the skills, what you kind of normally kind of include in your kind of paragraph below that, I suppose, in terms of your skills, your experiences, your key outcomes in that as well. But also kind of allows you to kind of provide that more, I suppose, kind of holistic overview of what your kind of key skills and strengths are, as well as kind of how I generally tend to approach it. But not had kind of masses of experience of kind of like sifting those at the other end, I suppose. But that's kind of generally how I tend to approach it. But I don't know if Ollie, that's similar or different, or if you've done many of them.
Yeah, no, I think it's I think it creates confusion and that's also nothing we can control. But I think the ones that I've seen, I think that take a better or the best approach to it, kind of take it quite literally in terms of, well, what are the skills? Maybe in terms of like qualifications or professional awards, that sort of thing. So if you have a project management qualification, or if you have like a government communications service advanced practitioner or something, that's a good place to put it in, because it doesn't really fit anywhere else maybe. So those sorts of things that you have, or a degree, or a master's, whatever you have that you think it may be relevant to the job, that you can just add a bit of colour to what else you put in any other boxes, would be my thing. I think as well, sorry, is that it's almost, the CV, the fact that the CV and the skills thing come together. If you kind of think of more of like a traditional written CV, that you might have that sort of blurb where you give your sort of like, what are my strengths? What am I looking? What can I bring to the role? In that sort of unstructured sort of space, rather than in, like, as Gregor says, in a star example in the personal statement. So yeah, more of that high level overview of you as a person.
Very much, folks. Bit more of a kind of concise question here. So I'm not sure if we would be able to answer it, but I could certainly check. Jacqueline's saying they work for Social Security Scotland, and do you know if they use the same process as the rest of the civil service for CVs, applications, etc.?
Yeah, so I've seen kind of like a few jobs and applications and stuff on it. I think it is very, very similar. I think there's some kind of slight differences in terms of how you kind of present that behaviour or example. I think the thing that I've seen that I quite like about the Scottish Government stuff is I think they have kind of like the STAR model, but they have an extra R at the end of it, which kind of like reflection in terms of what would you do differently next time, or what have you kind of learned from it. So I think that's kind of the one thing that I've noticed that's different as well. But again, what I would kind of encourage you to do where possible is that if you're kind of applying for a Scottish Government job and you're kind of currently within the UK Gov, or kind of vice versa, then kind of try and reach out to someone in that kind of department and kind of see how did they kind of find the application process, what is the difference, and if they'd be kind of willing to have a look over your application as well. Last random thing that I'll throw in as well, which is a bit different from the question, I suppose, but a useful thing can be sometimes at the bottom of adverts, there can be a kind of a recruiter kind of name or contact. Feel free to reach out to that person, have a quick chat with them, understand the role a little bit as well, ask them those types of questions in terms of saying, right, I've applied for lots of UK government jobs, what's the kind of difference that you see in terms of application between the two governments? So I think that can just be a useful tool to understand more about the role, give that person an early indication that you're someone that's quite keen, you're there to apply, you kind of make that kind of bond a relationship with them as well, and you kind of understand what they're like as well. Because they'll either be the kind of recruiter for your kind of job, or they'll be the kind of line manager that you could eventually end up working with as well. So it's a good kind of point to kind of get in touch with them as well.
Yeah, and I think everything Gregor says is correct, and I think this links to a sort of wider skill. Sometimes you maybe think, what is the point of networking and that sort of thing. I think this is exactly when that can pay dividends. If I'm looking at a job in Cabinet Office, maybe speak to Keir, like, oh, what's the process like? What's the sort of language they use in the Cabinet Office, or similar with Natalia in DWP, or what do they use? You can use your networks to sort of talk to people in that organisation, to help you tailor to the sort of language and experiences that you might need.
Great, thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, really, really good kind of practical tips there, folks. So thanks very much for that. Next question is, do you have any advice to give on keywords that recruitment panels might be looking for? I've applied to for various jobs that were all different, and I've used the success profile behaviours within, including my own examples, but don't seem to be getting anywhere. Are there specific words that stand out? So thanks very much, Niamh, for that question, and kind of again for a bit of a flavour of your own experience. I think we've kind of discussed a wee bit, between us in terms of, certain kind of job applications can be quite kind of specific in terms of what they may look for. Gregor, I think a really good kind of phrase you used was the buzzword bingo as well, and really being quite conscious of not kind of going over the top with including, kind of what you think might be keywords. So I suppose kind of, and we've kind of discussed this, maybe just kind of reiterate what that kind of fine balance might be. And with that, actually, obviously, a lot of kind of what we might need to write is quite specific, but are there any kind of general kind of statements or words or phrases that actually are quite effective across the board that you've maybe seen or you've experienced?
Yeah, I don't think I've not got a list written down of kind of like really good words, I would say is the first thing. So I think I suppose kind of the thing to think about is kind of like elevating some of your language potentially that you're kind of using within your personal statements and CVs. Again, there's kind of discussion about whether that's the right or wrong thing to do, I guess. But again, that could be something that's kind of useful. I think the key bit for me though is kind of like reading through the job advert, especially that kind of essential criteria, and kind of picking out those keywords from there, because each kind of advert will be kind of different as well, and have different points within it as well. So I think if you try and kind of meet those words, that's where you're going to get your keywords from as well. But I think the examples that kind of Natalia shared earlier, that's kind of like a really good kind of practical example of kind of saying how you can kind of like level something up in terms of your language and your impact within it as well. So I think maybe kind of take some time to kind of like reflect on what you've got there, and is there anything that you can kind of level up without that kind of losing that complete how or what you did sort of within it as well. So yeah, I think that'd be my only kind of parting advice on that one.
I think it's really tough at the moment. There's like a lot of applications for every role, so it might not be necessarily the words that you've used in your examples or anything particular. It's maybe just elevating, as Gregor says, the language. I think one sort of tip I would use or say it would be to not to replicate, but to just take a look at the sort of language that like the senior civil servants or more senior grades use to you in sort of like posts on the intranet or communications that they send out to you. That gives you a good indication of the sort of language that your senior leaders are using, and maybe that kind of sets the tone for the department, or so it gives you a good example of the sort of words they use, or the phrasing and that sort of thing that people are maybe looking for when doing when reviewing applications.
Thanks again, both. Again, some kind of really good kind of practical points there. I mean, Gregor, slightly disappointed you don't have a list of good keywords, but just conscious of time, folks, and maybe got time for kind of one, maybe two more. But really good question here from Cassandra. So kind of regarding referencing diverse experience in job applications, my understanding was if you reference too far back, the recruiter's assumption would be that you don't actually have any recent experience in that particular behaviour. So kind of basically the question is around, so for kind of what we're saying, does credit have to be given regardless of how old the kind of behaviour or the example is? So I think really kind of good question there and really good point.
Yeah, good question and very subjective is what I would say. So I've kind of spoken to people who kind of would want that kind of recency, I suppose, in terms of that kind of experience, and that might stand them ahead of a candidate that had that kind of 10 years ago. My opinion on it is that if you can do it 10 years ago, you can probably still do it now. And you've probably built a hell of a lot of skills since then as well that'll be useful for you and kind of reflected on your approach. So that's kind of how I generally tend to stand at it. But I think, again, I would make it personal towards you. If there's kind of experience that you've had in the past that you think is really relevant to that job and you think you can kind of pull out, then by all means do it. And I think you can't kind of like make up experience is what I would say. Some people might try, but you shouldn't in terms of kind of presenting that within your statement as well. So if there's kind of things that you can pull across from volunteering, or there's kind of wider things within your role, you can think about, right, maybe I did a stakeholder engagement role 5 years ago. I've not done that kind of recently, but here's how I do the stakeholder engagement bit within my current role in terms of here's how I manage with my team, here's how I manage with the wider directorate that I work in, whatever it may be. Then that might be the kind of way to just kind of link those experiences to show you've got that thread of being able to kind of communicate with external stakeholders throughout, for example.
Yeah, it's super subjective, as Gregor says, and I think that's the key thing, linking it. So yeah, if you're in a role now, pulling out the example that shows, or maybe even been explicit, I did this previously, but I still use the tools and skills that I learned in my current role, or I've used it recently in a role, or outside work. Just try to link it back. That's the key thing, I would say. And maybe just like explicitly show that that's the reason why you're saying it, so you can include your previous skills and what you're doing now or more recently.
Great. Thanks again, both. And I think, folks, that's us at time. So thank you both, Gregor and Ollie for some really kind of good practical points and some really interesting insights as well. I'm sure everyone agreed that was really, really helpful. And also thank you to everyone who kind of got involved and asked questions. And I can see actually quite a bit of discussion in the chat as well with people sharing their experiences or their kind of tips. I think that's really, really important. As I mentioned at the start of this session, really this is about trying to build a bit of a kind of community and really kind of trying to share our own experiences. Basically, you know, in terms of what you heard today, a lot of this is quite bespoke, it's quite subjective. Unfortunately, there's not always going to be a one-size-fits-all, but I think by talking about this and discussing this, we can all get ourselves more confident and really trying to improve our skills in this kind of space, in this area. So thank you for joining and getting involved. We should be sending in a bit of a evaluation survey. As I say, this is the kind of first iteration of this series, so really, really kind of keen to hear your feedback and what you think about it and how and if we can improve it in any way. The recording and the transcript and the slides should all be shared with you. So yeah, kind of do bear with us as we kind of get that together and share with you as well. So yeah, a kind of final thanks to our speakers and for Gregor and Ollie for joining and to all of you as well. So hopefully see you at the next seminar. Thanks folks. Have a good day.
Thank you.